Update. Am I the a-hole for telling my 19 female daughter she will have to move out of my house if I get divorced because of her lies after her stepdad saw her naked? Original post. Throwaway account due to the situation. But I need to know because I'm getting calls and texts from family accusing me of being an a-hole for not being on my daughter's side. My husband and I have been married for a little over 5 years now. I will say my daughter 19 female and he have an okay relationship. Not exactly father and daughter, but more of an advice ask and given type of relationship. I have never picked up on anything weird from my husband toward my daughter, and my daughter has never said or insinuated anything either. On Thursday, my husband and I were watching a movie in the living room. We paused the movie when he got up to use the bathroom. I heard him knocking on the door twice, literally 3 knocks each time, a couple of seconds apart. It was loud enough for me to hear from the living room. The next moment, I heard screaming. I rushed to the bathroom and saw my daughter completely naked, covering herself and yelling at my husband to get out. I didn't see everything that happened, but what I saw after hearing the yelling was my husband literally falling over his own feet and struggling to get the bathroom door closed. I asked my husband what happened and he said he knocked. Nobody answered, so we went in and saw my daughter naked in front of the mirror. He said to try to get out as quickly as possible. After my daughter calmed down, I asked her side of the story. She said she was changing and all of a sudden, my husband walked into the bathroom. I asked her why she didn't answer when he knocked. She said he didn't knock. I told her I heard him knock, so I was sure he did. She then admitted she didn't hear it because she had her AirPods on and was listening to music. We sorted the situation out, and my husband apologized to her, explaining that he thought the bathroom was empty. She even gave him a hug and apologized for yelling at him. The problem now is that my daughter got family members involved, and they are now calling my husband a creep. I got a call from my sister berating me for still having my husband in the house. I asked what she meant, and it came out that my daughter spun a whole other story. She left out the fact that she was listening to music with her AirPods and told everyone that she answered him, but he still walked into the bathroom to look at her. We have cameras in our hallway that prove my husband knocked. You can see it on the video, but the cameras have no audio. I sat my daughter down and asked her about it. She denied saying anything like that or telling anyone. I got mad and asked, then how does your aunt know what happened? She went silent. She admitted she talked to my niece about it, and my niece must have told her mother. I asked her why she lied about what happened and made my husband look bad when he did nothing wrong. She denied lying about anything, but I told her what my sister said. She started crying and apologized, saying she was just talking and making up scenarios with her niece. Yesterday, I got calls and texts from family members as the wrong story spread. My husband is now looking like a creep to everyone. I sat my daughter down again and had her read some of the things being said about my husband. I told her she has to fix this because her line caused it. She refused, saying she didn't spread this and only told her cousin. She also doesn't want to say anything to anyone because they'll think badly of her. She said, they know my husband and this will just blow over. Everything blew up when my husband walked into the living room with his bags packed and said he's going to stay with his parents for a while because he doesn't want to be in this situation anymore, where he's made out to be this kind of person. My daughter broke down, apologized repeatedly and said she would fix it, but my husband still left. I told her that if I get divorced because of her lies, she will be moving out of my house. I told her she better fix what she did and tell everyone what really happened because I will not lose a man who loves and actually cares for me over lies. She asked me to help her and I told her no. She isn't a child anymore, and her lies for attention caused this. This is on her. Now I'm being accused of taking my husband's side and not providing a safe space for my daughter. I don't know what to do. My husband asked for space, my daughter is inconsolable, and I am not in the best state myself. Now for the comments before reading the update. Extremely distressing for your husband. I would take your daughter, drive to the niece's house, sit down with the niece and her mother, and make your daughter tell them the real story. After that, I would insist that the niece's mother call every single person she or they told and admit she was wrong. If your daughter refuses, kick her out. For every person who said anything about your husband, cut them out of your life unless they apologize to him in person. She said she was lying, but for all I know, she's lying now. Her mom is making her say it's a lie. Why has the husband moved out if it was just a mistake? No matter what she says now, people will still believe he's a creep. I hope she's happy. You're the a-hole. Door locks. Stop making assumptions. Who said I don't have locks on the doors? Is it my fault my daughter didn't use the freaking lock on the door? You're the a-hole if you choose a man over your daughter. So I should choose my daughter who lied for attention, or some reason I don't really know, especially over something like this, over a man that has done nothing but love me and cared for us both, without asking for anything in return? Yes and no. Your daughter needs therapy. Something caused her to lie and create this chaos. If you kick her out, you could lose her for good, or she could really spiral out of control. Your husband did nothing wrong since you heard him knocking even though the video has no sound. I honestly think therapy for her individually, along with family therapy, will probably work in time. Nobody can say with 100% accuracy if it will, but it's worth trying. I know many are downvoting me, but honestly, I don't care. I just strongly feel that everything that can be done to help your daughter should come first. I will sound selfish now, I know that, but I don't care. My husband comes first now. My marriage comes first. Trying to fix what she broke comes first, not her. Especially since she refuses to help fix what she broke. Actions have consequences, and again, I will be called a bad mother, but she's going to learn this lesson the hard way. Now for the update over a week later. Sorry for only updating now, but I'm not in the best place at the moment, and it has taken me a couple of days to get my thoughts together. I don't know what to do anymore. My husband has asked for a divorce. First, let me answer a couple of questions I saw coming up repeatedly. Locks. We have locks on every door in the house. I don't know why my daughter didn't use the lock on the bathroom door. Cameras. The cameras inside the house aren't pointed at any door, except for the ones at the front and back doors. The other camera is at the end of the hall, and you can see every door in the hallway from that camera. Bathroom. We have a bathroom in our bedroom, but we can't use it at the moment because the water is shut off due to renovations. On Friday, my husband came back home and asked to talk. During our conversation, he showed me his phone, and some of the things my family members were saying about him were outright horrible. Calling him a pedo, asking him how many times he had peeked before. I don't recognize my family anymore. I understand if he had actually done something wrong, but he hasn't. The hatred they are showing over a stupid mistake tells me they refuse to listen, or they have hated him from the start and are now using this to try and get rid of him. He said he can't ever come back, and that this has now started to affect his work life as well. He was called into HR to explain himself, because some of my family members had called his office. Luckily, his employer hasn't taken any action and refuses to do anything unless a case is brought against him. They know my husband very well, and I think they believe him because he is still working. During our talk, he explained that he does love me and is happy I stood up for him, but my daughter's actions have caused too many problems, accusations, and fears. He said he has been sitting at the office and at his parents' home every day, just waiting for the police to show up and arrest him. He said her lies broke him, and he can't see a way to come back from this. I asked him to reconsider and suggested counseling, but he refused, saying everything is too broken to fix. I told him I would kick my daughter out and explained everything I had done to address the situation. However, he said I'm missing the point. His life could have been completely ruined because of a lie. My family will never trust him again and will always harbor hatred or suspicions about him. Now that my daughter wants to clear things up so long after the fact, they will think we forced her to do it, which will just make things worse. He said he will always remain the creep in their eyes. I told him we could cut off my family and move away. I showed him my phone and the messages I sent to every single person who refused to listen, and I told him I blocked them. He asked about my daughter. I said I would kick her out and she could stay with my parents. He asked if, after we moved away, I would abandon my daughter completely, because he doesn't want to be near her or alone with her at all. I didn't know how to respond. Before I could answer, he said again that it's better for us to get divorced. He said, I will never ask you to abandon your daughter. I will never expect you to do something like that. But I don't want her anywhere near me. If you abandon your daughter, I don't know if I could ever look at you the same afterwards, even if it was for my sake. The only solution here is for us to get divorced. At that moment, my daughter came running down the hallway into the living room, crying. I think she had been listening to our conversation. Before she could say anything, my husband jumped up from the couch, put his hands out, and asked her not to come near him. He said, "Before you say anything, I will start recording the conversation now," and took out his phone. I think I saw something break in my daughter's eyes at that moment as the realization of everything hit her all at once. She asked my husband to forgive her and said she never meant for things to get so out of hand. She explained she was just making up scenarios with her cousin, and her cousin ran with it. My husband asked her why she didn't clear it up immediately. She said she didn't think it would go this far and thought it would just blow over because everyone knows him. He showed her his phone and asked her to read some of the messages. My daughter went completely silent. We talked for about 4 hours. At the end, my husband said he would give us 3 months to move out of the house because it is his house. He said my daughter could keep the car because it was a gift and that he would finish paying this year's tuition but would not pay anything going forward. He said he hasn't gotten a lawyer yet but told me to get one. He would like to handle the divorce without lawyers, but if I want one, I can get one. He said he would be fair in the divorce and doesn't harbor anything against me, but he can't stay in the relationship. My daughter was sitting on the floor, looking like a ghost. I couldn't say anything while listening to him talk about divorce and splitting assets as if the last 5 years were nothing. The best way to describe it is like he was returning something to a store. He left the house and I just sat on a couch. I don't know if I was crying, talking, or what. I can't remember much, as everything felt muffled. Then my daughter started crying, saying, "Sorry, sorry, sorry," over and over while lying on the floor. When I got up, I saw my husband's car still in the driveway. I looked out the window and saw him crying in the car. Seeing that completely broke me. My daughter and I haven't talked since Friday. My family members have shown up at the house to apologize because my daughter has now cleared everything up and even shared a video from the camera with them. Every time they show up, I just close the door in their faces. I've been getting Facebook messages, Instagram messages, calls, and texts. When I block them, they create new accounts or use different numbers. I don't want to lose my husband. I really don't. This is the first man I've ever met who has treated me with kindness, respect, and love, and now it's all over. I've tried to talk to him and convince him to go to counseling, but every time I try, he responds, I can't take the risk. I've tried to meet him in person, but he says it wouldn't be a good idea. I've gone to his parents' house, but they refuse to let me see him. I've gone to his work, but I was told he was sent home by his boss. I don't know how to fix this. Having my daughter move out won't work because I need to move out of the house as well. I don't want anything from my husband, I just want him. I haven't talked to a lawyer yet, but I don't think I can keep the house. He owned it before we moved in. I really want to fix this. I still want to kick my daughter out of the house, but would he still give me a chance to fix it, even after what he said about me abandoning my daughter and not seeing me the same afterwards? Am I really going to lose a wonderful man? Edit. I forgot how Reddit fixates on one thing. Regarding the house, I have no intentions of trying to take his house or anything like that. It's not my house. I had questions in my previous post about the house, and I think I just answered them here. I am not going to try to take his house. He owns it and has owned it since before we got together. I have no right to the house and will not try to take it. I hope this clears it up. Quite simply, you can't fix this. What your daughter did is absolutely horrendous. She has ruined your soon-to-be ex-husband's reputation and your relationship with one lie. Stop visiting him at work. Stop trying to contact him. Just stop. As hard as this is for you, it's even harder for him. The more you reach out, violating his boundaries, the more likely he is to build resentment. If you're unable to respect his wishes regarding contact, it's no wonder your daughter has boundary issues. Focus on rebuilding your and your daughter's lives from scratch, without him. Get therapy for your daughter so she learns to be better. Right now, she's a dumpster fire. It sounds like he is going to be very kind to you in the divorce. Exactly. Opie needs to leave this poor man alone. And leave him alone for good. He doesn't deserve all this drama. What is happening with your sister and her daughter? Is your niece showing remorse? Are there going to be consequences for her actions? Do you think your family will reach out to your husband's company to apologize for their stupidity? I'm sorry, Opie. I wish people understood how false allegations can ruin a person's life. Your daughter and niece's stupidity and callous behavior destroyed a family, a marriage, your relationship with your daughter, and your relationship with family members. They are completely silent. Last story. Am I the a-hole for not inviting my mom to Christmas dinner after what she did last year? I'm 34 years old and a mom of 2 little kids. Last year, during Christmas dinner, my mom 65 caused a big scene. She showed up with several bottles of wine, even though we all knew she's in treatment for alcohol issues. At first, everything was fine, but halfway through dinner, she started criticizing my husband, 37, in front of everyone. She mocked his job and said it wasn't good enough for her daughter. I tried to calm her down, but after a few minutes, she started bad-mouthing me too, saying I had been a disappointment as a daughter. My kids, who are 7 and 4, were there listening to everything. It was so humiliating, we had to ask her to leave. This year, I decided not to invite her to avoid a similar drama, but my sister, 40, is furious with me. She says it's cruel to leave her alone on Christmas and that I should give her another chance. My husband supports my decision, but the rest of my family is making me feel like the villain. Am I the bad one for protecting my family's peace and not inviting her? Now for the comments. Your sister is free to spend Christmas with her, but you're wise not to. Your kids come first, not your alcoholic mother. She doesn't get to ruin another holiday for them. They don't need those kinds of memories. Not a-hole. Exactly. Inviting her over again will just lead to another ruined holiday. Protect your peace and your children. Your sister can host her if she really wants to. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. My mom did something similar to my sister last Christmas. She got very drunk and screamed at her over something trivial in front of her 2 young kids, 3 and 5. My sister cut her off completely after that, and I don't blame her for a second. It shouldn't just be Christmas where your mom isn't welcome. She shouldn't be in OP's kids' lives at all, until she's been sober for a year. OP's husband shouldn't have to deal with her either, not until she's been sober for a year and apologizes to him for being disrespectful. Not the a-hole. I am a substance abuse therapist. This is a boundary you need to put in place to protect yourself and your family, as well as to send a message that you won't tolerate her poor choices and behavior. Love her from a distance. Time can heal these wounds, but she needs to prove to you that she will stay clean and sober, and she needs to rebuild that trust. Update. I'm tired of my ex-husband's wife wanting to be my friend just because he cheated on us both. Original post. I don't understand why I'm in this situation, and honestly, I'm frustrated because even my own family tells me I'm the bad one here. I just need to vent. I don't need advice or people saying, do this, you should tell her this, or I would write her this. Over 17 years ago, my ex-husband cheated on me with a woman I didn't know, but she knew who I was. He left me for her when our only daughter was a baby, and I just moved on with my life. I wasn't going to fight for a man who made immature decisions without thinking of the consequences. He married that woman, and I focused on having a healthy co-parenting relationship for my daughter. He never showed any remorse, even telling me that our relationship was a mistake and that the other woman was the love of his life. That helped me see he's not someone I want or need in my life. Now he's cheated on her, and for some reason, this woman, who's always had a cold, distant relationship with me, is trying to talk to me every day. I found out about his infidelity through my daughter, who wasn't affected by it, so I didn't give it much thought. My only concern was whether he'd still be able to have our daughter over on the weekends like usual. But his wife has started sending me messages explaining what happened, even though I never asked her. In the past, I only reached out to her if he didn't answer a question about our daughter. It's obvious she needs someone to talk to, but even when I respond briefly, she keeps sending me long voice messages about it. I get that she's going through something, but why come to me? I don't want to be rude, but I really don't care about how she or he feels. In one of her messages, she said, "You know how I feel now." And yes, maybe I do, but that was 17 years ago. It's not the same. To be completely honest, she can't compare her situation to mine at all. I was a new mom when my husband told me he'd been cheating because I was boring in bed and didn't appreciate him. She, on the other hand, knew he was unfaithful when she married him. So it's not quite the same situation. I've tried ignoring her, but when I bring it up with my family or friends, almost all of them say things like, "Oh, but she must feel lonely. She wasn't to blame for being the other woman. You should be more empathetic." Or my favorite, "She needs someone to talk to." They're basically telling me it's my responsibility as a feminist to support her. I get that she's not to blame for him being a cheater, but as a full-grown adult, she chose to marry a man she knew had cheated with her while his wife was pregnant. So why should I now feel obligated to be her support system? When she had a choice to do the right thing, she didn't. So why is it suddenly my duty to be her friend? It doesn't make sense, and the women around me keep insisting I should feel empathy for her. She and he knew exactly what they were getting into, and I don't see why I need to be her free therapist. Being cheated on isn't my whole personality, and I don't want to talk about it with her 24/7. I'm just going to keep ignoring her because, frankly, I don't care how she feels, even if that makes me a bad feminist for not empathizing. Edit? No, I can't block her because she still lives with him, and I need to have her contact info in case of an emergency with my daughter. Honestly, it's strange how many people are commenting and messaging me about what I should say to her or even drafting messages for me. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to use words from strangers who don't know me, my feelings, or the full situation. It feels like people are projecting their own issues onto my post. Now for the top comments before reading the update. Personally, I just find your family really weird. Just from the title, the situation seemed so absurd that it made me laugh. You don't owe her anything. Tell her to find a therapist because you don't care. My mother was someone's lover, so she has the mentality of, you can't judge the lives of others. It wasn't her fault to fall in love. So that's kind of the way she and my siblings think. I'd be brutally honest with her, just like you were in the post. You're absolutely right. You can't compare your situation from 17 years ago to hers now. She knew exactly what she was getting into, and now she has to lie in the bed she made. You're not her therapist, and honestly, she shares the blame for sleeping with a married man, knowing his wife was carrying his child. As for your family, I don't even know how to describe it. Your mom justifying her own actions like that? Ew. At one point, I thought about being totally honest, but then I thought that would only bring unnecessary problems if they get back together because it seems like it. I just answer things like, "What a shame," or downcast face with sweat emoji. And she sends me audios of more than 2 minutes that I don't usually listen to because I don't care. Something very similar just happened to me. My abusive ex's new wife had a breakdown and left him, then showed up at my door wanting to hang out. We've always had a polite but distant relationship. Luckily, I was out of town and told her we could hang out when I got back. Truth is, I don't want to hang out with her, and I definitely don't want to rehash all the crap he put me through. I'm in no mood to be back in that space. Plus, there's the whole issue of her putting up with it for so long. She dealt with way more than I did, but my family seems to think that staying together through abuse is somehow an accomplishment. Anyway, I just humored her and kept flaking until she left me alone. That was years ago for me. I'm over it. I don't want to go back, and I don't want to hear about what she went through. I've already heard enough from my kids. My family had the same reaction. They used to say that in the end, my ex and his wife were really soulmates, just because they were together for 17 years. Now for the update 2 weeks later. Hi, it's been a while since I posted, and I just want to give a little update for those who are concerned. First of all, a bit of background. My mother had a long-term affair while I was a teenager and well into my adulthood. Their relationship lasted for years until he died, and I don't think his wife ever found out. That's why my mother tries to manipulate me into not judging my ex's wife, saying things like, no one chooses who they fall in love with. She sees herself in that woman, which is why she's always said that my ex-husband and his lover, now his wife, are soulmates, and that I shouldn't stand in the way. I was very young at the time, and my mother was the only person I could turn to for a bit of support. Narcissists always prey on the vulnerable, and she took full advantage. Now, I have limited contact with her, though my daughter does spend time with my family. As for my friends, and opinions about the other woman vary. Many believe it's misogynistic to judge them because they're single women and it's the man who should be blamed, and we should show solidarity with other women. I usually agree with that perspective, but not in this case. I can feel empathy when the woman didn't know or was a minor being groomed. But here, I have no pity. She knew exactly what she was doing. Women can also choose to be mean and cruel. We're not weak, and my ex's wife is fully accountable for her choices. I know that explanation might be unnecessary, but some people didn't understand my family's or friends' behavior. And honestly, it feels good to vent. So a few days ago, I actually confronted my ex's wife. I'd had an incredibly stressful day, and seeing her messages pop up on WhatsApp pushed me over the edge. I sent her a voice message, telling her I'm not interested in her life or her suffering. I said I'm not her friend, nor do I want to be. She never apologized for her actions, and now she expects me to join her support group for women cheated on by my ex? I let her know that she walked into this with full knowledge of who he was. Knowing he'd already cheated on the mother of his child, she married him anyway, believing she'd be different. I'd love to post that audio here. It was 5 full minutes of catharsis, telling her exactly how I felt. She got upset and we ended up arguing, which was exhausting. I definitely don't want issues to disrupt 17 years of normal co-parenting. I forwarded one of her audios to my ex, after listening to all of them and realizing she hasn't once apologized. Not that I need her apology. She just complained, looking for someone to trash him with or act as her unpaid therapist. I told my ex to tell his wife to back off and find a real therapist. He apologized and said they're both working on their marriage, so she's still dealing with anger and insecurity, obviously. Since I went through the same thing, he said she thought we could share the pain. I told him I'm not her friend, and this affects our co-parenting, so he needs to make sure she respects my boundaries. He reluctantly agreed to talk to her, and for the past 3 days, I haven't received any messages from her, aside from one today letting me know my daughter was sleeping over there. So it seems like it worked. I don't care if they have a happy or miserable marriage, and I don't care if she's happy knowing he cheated but still stays with him. I just want to live in peace, free of drama from people who, at over 40, are still mentally stuck in high school. Karma said, hold my purse. Lol. They'll cheat with you, then on you. Mistress and your mom are so delusional, it's crazy. You should give your ex's wife your mom's number. That's the perfect shoulder for her to cry on, since they can bond as mistresses. Good for you setting boundaries and standing up for yourself. Next story. Am I the a-hole for asking my soon-to-be ex-husband why I'd take him back when the nanny does more for the family than he does? My husband and I are separated and getting a divorce. We have a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old. He owns his own business and told me he'd be home by 5:30 to 6 every night. I get home around 6 to 6:30, so I didn't think anything of him always being home before me. I had our 3-year-old in extended daycare and our 8-year-old in our school's after-school program thinking he was working. Halfway through last school year, I hired a nanny instead of using the extended care programs. After our oldest had issues with her program. About 2 weeks in, I got a call from the nanny saying my soon-to-be ex had locked them out and told her to take them to the park. The kids were hungry and she didn't have car seats. His house is walking distance from school and daycare, so she hadn't needed them. I called him and he said he'd gotten home early, wanted some space from the kids, and didn't want a random 18-year-old in the house. I had to leave work early to let them in. When I spoke with the nanny, she mentioned she was always home when she got there with the kids and that he was difficult, demanding that she and the kids stay in one of the kids' rooms, ignoring the kids if they try to talk to him, and getting upset if she left the room to grab his snack. That was the last straw for me. I filed for divorce by the end of the following week, and the kids and I moved out by the end of the next month. I ended up letting go of that nanny, and now we have Amina, 24. Amina is a Middle Eastern refugee with 3 kids of her own, ages 2, 4, and 7. Hiring Amina has been one of the best decisions I've ever made. I come home every day to a clean house, homework done, and some of the best Arabic food I've ever tasted. I have no idea how she manages it all, but her support allows me to enjoy my time with my kids, instead of scrambling to make dinner, clean up, and get my 8-year-old to do her homework. She handles grocery shopping, keeps track of school events, and even takes care of things like clothes and school supply shopping for the kids. My soon-to-be ex never did any of that. I once left him with the kids for a week while I went on a work trip, and they lived on McDonald's and pizza, which wrecked my 8-year-old's stomach. When I came back, the house was in the worst shape I'd ever seen. Our 2-year-old, at the time, ran out of clean clothes, and he bought her new ones instead of washing the dirty ones. Now he is asking about getting back together, saying it's better for the kids if we're together. I told him he's never truly thought about what's best for the kids. Even when he takes them for the weekend, all he does is bring them to Grandma's house. I asked him why I should go back to him when Amina does more for us than he ever did. He argued that he works to provide for us, as if that's different from me also working. Apparently close to double the hours he worked, and for similar pay. Now his family is calling me a bad mom, saying that if I cared about the kids, I'd want them to have 2 parents. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. I personally would marry Amina. Having a neglectful, abusive parent is worse than a single parent. Ask any child psychologist. What you're describing is not laziness. It's straight-out abuse. You can lose your kids if CPS had been called in that last situation. You really need to think about the kids and not what society told us about what's good for the kids. 100%. If he doesn't live there, the kid grows up to believe he loved them, but unfortunately wasn't able to live there and be around to show it. If he's there and kicking them out the house and getting angry when they approach him, they're at risk for developing all sorts of insecurities. He doesn't seem mature enough to be trusted with your children's mental well-being. You do not have to give a reason to anyone for not wanting to reconcile. If they insist, then I found that I am happier, the kids are more stable, and our lives run more smoothly as things are right now. That's it. No one is owed an explanation for your decision, not even the soon-to-be ex. Ex just wants to get back together because I bet he hates paying child support and not being taken care of by OP. Screw him. Last story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to help my estranged son nor meeting his child? I haven't slept in nearly 2 days, so please excuse any grammar mistakes. I'm from a country where bullying isn't taken seriously. I'm using fake names to protect my other 2 children, who I'll call Eve and Henry. I lost one of my daughters, Rose, 15 years ago due to relentless bullying by a group who never faced any consequences. One of the people responsible was Sarah, who is now married to my son, Mike. Apparently, they met in university, connected, and started a relationship. A former classmate sent a video of them on a date to Eve. When we confronted Mike, he broke down saying Sarah was sorry and gave a million excuses. He even said that Rose made her own decision and that we couldn't blame Sarah. He added that if we tried to make him choose, he would choose Sarah. I told him he didn't need to choose because from that day on, I had 2 dead children and that he should never contact me again. His father and siblings did the same. The only family members who didn't cut him off were his aunt and cousin. Over the years, they tried to reach out with apologies, wedding invitations, and even pictures of their son. I thought Mike understood when he wasn't notified until 2 weeks after his father's funeral. But 2 days ago, he showed up at Henry's workplace to tell him that his wife, Sarah, has terminal cancer and that he needs me because he can't handle it all on his own. Mike then showed up at my house with his son, refusing to leave until I spoke to him. After about 4 hours, I opened the door and told him to leave. Mike tried to force me to meet his child, saying his son was innocent and that Sarah has repented for her role in Rose's bullying, urging me to forgive them. I told him that Sarah's cancer is karma, to which he responded by asking how I could be so cruel, not only to them but to their child. I told him I didn't care about his child or what happens to either of them, and to get off my property before I called Henry to have him removed. His aunt, my sister-in-law, called, saying I'm a selfish, cruel mother who can't let go of the past. She mentioned that Rose wouldn't have held anything against the child. I told her no one was stopping her from helping them, but she made excuses. One being that it wasn't her place, even though it wasn't her place to give Mike my address or Henry's. Am I the a-hole for not helping them? What a deeply painful experience this must have been for you. Losing a child, especially under those circumstances, is an unimaginable hurt. And when a close family member is connected to that loss, the betrayal you feel becomes even more overwhelming. The fact that Mike's life has moved on with Sarah, knowing the pain her actions contributed to, is a lot to take in. You made a choice to protect yourself and your other children from further hurt, especially after how Mike responded when confronted. So, it's understandable why you would hesitate to open the door to that part of your past again, especially without real accountability or meaningful actions to heal the past wounds. Mike may be asking for help, but it doesn't mean you have to forget the impact their choices had on you and your family. It's a deeply personal decision on whether to help Mike or meet his child. But remember, you are allowed to honor what feels safe and healthy for you. How do you feel about holding firm on that boundary? I know helping Mike will cost me losing contact with Eve. They were very close to Rose, and they witnessed some of the bullying. Update 2. Am I the a-hole for going behind my wife's back and telling her pregnant sister that she's being cheated on? Link to the first part of this saga in the description. Now for the second update. Many people ask me for an update, and I also need some outsider perspectives in my situation, so here it goes. Before I start, I want to clarify something for the people who kept calling me names for telling my sister-in-law the truth. Why do you think I should have minded my own business? She's family, and if family doesn't look out for each other, then who else will? Strangers? This isn't just some harmless or small lie for my brother-in-law. It's life-changing. My sister-in-law isn't just my sister-in-law. She's my friend. If I hadn't told her the truth, my POS brother-in-law would have just kept cheating, and I would have lost a friend if I had delayed any longer. Now for the update. My sister-in-law only stayed at my place for 2 days. After that, she called me and said she didn't want to trouble me anymore and was going to stay at a hotel. I tried to convince her not to waste her money unnecessarily, but she didn't listen and left anyway. And yes, I am divorcing my wife. After a week of no contact, she called me and said she wanted to reconcile. She told me she was angry that I didn't listen to her and went behind her back. She said she didn't want to break her sister's family and had planned to convince my brother-in-law to stop cheating. But she claimed I had messed everything up. She said she was coming back. I told her to come over because I wanted to talk to her in person. This isn't the kind of thing you discuss over the phone. When my wife arrived and started explaining herself, I told her I was filing for divorce. She was shocked and said we could make it work. I told her we couldn't. I said, I don't trust you after everything you said, and you left me with no contact. I was worried all day about where you were, if you were safe, etc., and now you suddenly show up? I can't make it work. She tried to convince me not to go through with a divorce, but I had already made up my mind. I told her that her sister had stayed at our place for 2 days, and she got angry, saying, fine, let's divorce, and left. I told my sister-in-law that I'm getting a divorce. She wasn't happy about it, but she didn't try to convince me one way or the other. I also told her she could stay with me instead of wasting money on a hotel. She said it was inappropriate, but I told her, either you waste your money and struggle or you can accept my help. So, my sister-in-law and I have been living together for the past couple of days. We've discussed our spouses and their behavior, and we're both pretty angry about everything. My sister-in-law is even angrier than I am. She ended up calling my wife, calling her names, and told me she's hell-bent on ruining my brother-in-law. She is divorcing him and plans to go nuclear. She wants as much money as possible in alimony and child support. She wants to drain him. My wife and I haven't spoken since she left, and we both know the divorce is happening. My sister-in-law, though still angry, has started to calm down because it's unhealthy for her and the baby. She's now focusing on her career and reading stories about single moms. She's preparing herself. So that's all for now. And to the weirdos out there, stay away. Neither my sister-in-law nor I have any romantic feelings for each other. I'm just helping her because she needed support, which is why she hesitated so much in accepting my help. Call me a moral police if you want, but I know I did the right thing, not just for my sister-in-law but for myself as well. Now I know exactly what kind of woman my wife is. Did your wife ever tell you where she went? I find it interesting that she has a place where she can just go for an extended period of time and nobody knows where she went to. She went to the guy who she was having an affair with. He did not want anything serious, hence why she came back. Smart to divorce this woman. I don't know, and I don't care. I had mixed feelings. I love my wife and tried to stop her from leaving. Tried to convince her, but she left anyway. Well, I was worried all day every day about my wife, wondering where she was, if she was safe, if she had eaten. She never contacted me after she left, and her family didn't know where she was either. But no matter how much I love her, it's better if I just divorce her. I've lost all trust in her, not just because she wanted to hide my brother-in-law's cheating, but also because she said she would expect me to forgive her if she cheated and that she would forgive me if I cheated. I don't want that. None of this. Besides, if a pregnant woman can put her emotions aside, think for herself and take steps to move forward, then I should do the same. I need to cut out the toxicity and restart my life instead of constantly worrying. In a way, she kind of inspired me. I'm so sorry you're having to go through this. Not the a-hole, but please get support from whoever you can and continue providing support to your sister-in-law. Wishing you the best going forward. Thanks. I got my parents' support, but they won't pick sides. After all, we both are their children and we are fighting, which is understandable. My mom calls me every day at least thrice to check up on me. Me and my sister-in-law support each other and talk a lot. I am in pain, but her pain is unimaginable. She's pregnant and found out her baby's father is a cheat, also low on money and ashamed to seek help. Yes, she's no longer my sister-in-law, but my friend. I'll try my best to support her. Though she's so much in pain, she's thinking about herself and her child. Women are truly strong, especially when they are pregnant indeed. Next story. Am I the a-hole for considering ending my not terrible marriage because being a step-family just isn't working? My husband, 40 male, was a widower when we met. I, 36 female, was a single woman who had never been married before. My husband has a daughter, April 13, from his first wife. April was 5 when her mom died, 7 when my husband and I met, 8 when she and I met, and 11 when we got married. Things with April were okay before I got pregnant. And by okay, I mean we weren't very close. She didn't call me mom or say she loved me, but we got along well. And she said she had no issues with us getting married. She was even in the wedding as her dad's best person. All was good. Then I got pregnant with our son, who is now 4 months old, and everything changed. She was furious when she found out we were expecting. She told us she would not be okay with it, and asked her dad how he could do that to her and her mom. From that moment on, she became hostile toward me, very angry, and lashed out at me, my husband, and anyone who tried to say she was going to be a big sister or referred to our son as her little brother. We got her into therapy and even did family therapy. April refused to speak. We tried to find a therapist who would click with her, but she still wouldn't talk. Eventually, we found a therapist who got her to speak one time, but she only said she didn't want to work with us or make things better. She refused to say why or answer any questions the therapist asked. She didn't address it with her individual therapist either. They worked on other issues instead, but that hasn't been enough to help her come around. People said that once our son was born, once she saw him, she'd fall in love with him and go back to how she was before. That hasn't happened. She's aggressively against anything to do with him. She has never held him, and we don't have any family photos of the 4 of us together. It breaks my husband's heart. He has talked to her and disciplined her, but it hasn't made a difference. She screams that he's not her brother, and even refuses to call him her half-brother, saying he's not my sibling at all. I can't speak to her at all now. The nice relationship we had is gone, and that makes me sad too. The situation isn't working, and our home no longer feels like a home. It feels like a house on the verge of collapse. I'm not sure I want to stay married and continue trying to figure this out for another 5 years. I don't see any hope for it to get better, and even though my son will still have to be around, maybe having 50% of the time in a loving home would be better. I'd be happier, even though I love my husband. When I confided in a friend, she told me I can't give up this quickly and that I'm not giving it enough time to get better. Am I the a-hole? People said that once our son was born, once she looked at him, she'd fall in love and go back to how she'd been before. I just have to ask, who the hell were these delusional people? Look at him and fall in love. Really? That's something you say to a nervous, soon-to-be parent. These people couldn't have had any real experience with this kind of situation. It rarely happens that older siblings, especially those who are vehemently opposed to the baby and want nothing to do with them, suddenly flip a switch just because they see the new kid. They don't look at the baby and think, "Aw, how cute, I love them so much." They look at the baby and think, "This is the drooling, puking crap monster that's turning my world upside down." Not just that, but she won't be the only little queen bee anymore. My older sister threw me out of the window as a baby and tried to harm me all throughout my childhood. Be careful. No judgment, but I'd be concerned about your son being with her during your husband's custody time with him if you divorce. Just something to consider since she is part of the household. And honestly, it sounds as if you would be giving her what she wants, which I don't know if that's a good thing. Next story. Am I the a-hole for asking my husband to prioritize our family tradition over his new friendship? My husband, 35 male, and I, 32 female, have a small but meaningful tradition we started during the first year of our marriage. It's nothing major, but it's important to me. Every November, on the weekend before Thanksgiving, we take a day trip to a lakeside town about an hour away. We spend the day walking, talking, and picking out a new ornament for our Christmas tree, something meaningful to our year. It's just one day, but it's one of those things that makes the holiday season special for us. Recently, my husband became great friends with a guy from his gym. They hit it off quickly, and I think it's great because my husband doesn't make new friends easily. His friend seems like a genuinely nice person and shares a lot of my husband's interests, like hiking and gaming. I know it's refreshing for my husband to have someone he clicks with so well. Here's the issue. My husband's friend invited him on a weekend trip during the exact same weekend as our tradition. My husband seemed hesitant to bring it up at first, but eventually he asked if I'd be okay with rescheduling our tradition to another weekend so he could go with his friend. I was caught off guard and told him it kind of hurt my feelings that he'd even consider moving it. He told me it wasn't a big deal for us to just go another weekend, and it's right in the sense that it wouldn't really affect anything logistically. But this trip has always felt like our thing. It's not that I don't want him to have fun or make new friends, but I feel like he's minimizing something that's special to us, or at least special to me. When I told him that, he looked surprised and then frustrated, saying I was overreacting. He eventually agreed to keep the weekend for our tradition, but I could tell he was disappointed, and I feel guilty about that. Part of me wonders if I'm being stubborn about a little ritual that maybe only I care about as much as I do. So, am I the a-hole for asking him to prioritize our tradition over his new friend? Edit. I saw some people asking how long we've been married. We've been married for 6 years, and we've been doing this tradition since our first year together. Always on the same weekend. A lot of people have asked why this specific weekend matters so much to me. I think it's because we've kept this tradition on the same weekend for over 6 years, and for me, the timing feels like an integral part of the tradition itself. It's become a marker for the start of the holiday season in my mind, and changing it feels like it would lose some of the meaning behind it. Info. While I think it's super nice your husband made a friend, he's currently blinded by the honeymoon phase of friendship. Does he actually enjoy the trip, or is he doing it because he wants to do it? He's kept the weekend open every year without me having to remind him, and we always have a great time. That said, he hasn't explicitly said how important it is to him or how much he enjoys it. I've expressed to him how much it means to me though, so I'm guessing it may feel more significant to me than it does to him. That's part of why I'm second-guessing myself. Maybe I've been assuming we were on the same page about it being our thing without ever checking in with him about how he feels. I don't see how changing the weekend you go will change the tradition though. To some people, changing weekends is fine. Others need to celebrate on certain days. My wife's father's side does Thanksgiving a week early every year so everyone can make time for their other family on Thanksgiving. I know others that get upset if you try to celebrate their birthday on the closest weekend rather than the actual date. Update after a few hours. I want to thank everyone who shared their opinions. After reading the comments and giving myself some time to reflect, I decided to talk to my husband again. I told him I felt bad about how things went earlier and that I didn't mean to make him feel like I'm keeping him on a leash. I also explained why our little tradition feels so special to me and how I've always seen that weekend as our weekend. He admitted that he hadn't realized how much it meant to me. He said he'd been excited about the trip with his friend because it was the first time in a long while that someone had reached out to him like that, and he didn't want to let that slip away. We both agreed that we could have handled the conversation better, and that neither of us wanted the other to feel like their feelings didn't matter. As mentioned earlier, we've decided to stick to our tradition this year as planned, and my husband is going to plan a weekend trip with his friend in January after the holidays are over. Last story. Am I the a-hole for not allowing my sister to have her birthday party in my house? My husband, 26 male, and I, 24 female, recently bought our first home, and we've worked incredibly hard to get here. We don't come from money, and everything we have, we've earned ourselves. We are very close to my side of the family and see them nearly every day. I've always kind of been the black sheep of the family because I'm the only one who has set boundaries. Anyway, a week after my husband and I moved in, my sister, 26 female, sent me an invitation to her birthday party, which she planned to hold at our new house. I want to note that she had briefly asked me about hosting the party here a few days earlier, and I told her I wasn't sure because we still had a lot of unpacking to do. Clearly, that wasn't a concern for her, as she went ahead and sent out the invitation days later, inviting extended family who live several hours away and would need to stay a night or two. Since we're still settling in, we don't have extra beds or much furniture yet, and my husband and I didn't feel ready to host what felt like a large gathering so soon, especially since we haven't even planned a housewarming party yet. Both of us work full-time and have limited time to unpack, so things are moving slowly. I told my sister that we'd be open to having a smaller, more intimate celebration, just immediate family and maybe one or two close friends. I also explained that this move has been a huge transition for me, and I'm still getting used to the new city and lifestyle. While I wanted to celebrate her, I didn't feel ready for a big party. After that, she stopped responding to me. The next day, I went to my parents' house during my lunch break and my dad came outside to tell me that they didn't want to see me. He said I was being selfish for turning down my sister's request and that I had hurt the whole family. Now my family refuses to speak to me until I apologize, and they've called me ungrateful and a narcissist. I don't know if I was in the wrong, if I made a big deal out of it, or if I unintentionally hurt my family. So, am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. No wonder you've had to set boundaries with your family. It's utterly ridiculous that they feel like she's entitled to your space like this. You'd best contact those extended family members before they make travel arrangements, because it doesn't sound like she's going to. Or at best, she'll tell them it's cancelled and it's all your fault, so you look terrible. The entire family seems like they're a-holes, to be honest. Who in their right mind demands someone's house for their own private celebration, then badmouth to everyone? What a nightmare. Not the a-hole. You never said yes. You said that you would have to think about it. Your sister is the one who jumped the gun and started planning and inviting people. I don't understand your dad's comments about you hurting the whole family. That makes no sense. Definitely don't apologize. You've done nothing wrong. Would not be surprised at all if the parents were the origin of, "Our place is too small for that. Why not at your sister's new place? You can have your big party over there." Update. Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my daughter-in-law take my late husband's wedding ring? Original post. I'm a widow in my 60s. My husband passed away 10 years ago and I've kept his wedding ring in a little box with some of his things. It's nothing fancy, just a plain gold band, but it's one of the few things I still have that feels like him. Sometimes when I miss him, I take it out and hold it. It's been a real comfort over the years. My daughter-in-law, Jenna, has always commented on the ring when she visits. She'll say things like, "It's so timeless," or "I'd love to wear something with that kind of history." I thought she was just being nice, but last week, she came right out and asked if she could borrow it for a while. I didn't really know how to respond at first. She said wearing it would help her feel closer to the family and honor my husband. I told her I wasn't comfortable with that. The ring is so personal to me. It's not just something you loan out. It's a part of my memories with him. But Jenna didn't seem to understand. She got upset and said she didn't think I trusted her and that I was being selfish for keeping something so meaningful to our family locked away. She even said it would mean more to her to wear it than for me to just keep it in a box. My son didn't really say much at a time, but later I got a text from Jenna. It was long and emotional. She said she was hurt and that I was treating her like an outsider and that maybe I was too stuck in the past to see how much this would mean to her. She even hinted that I was being controlling, which honestly broke my heart. Now, some other family members are saying I'm overreacting and that is just a ring, but it doesn't feel that way to me. My husband and I were married for 35 years. That ring has been with me through everything. Good times, bad times, raising our kids. I don't want to sound dramatic, but it feels like a piece of him is still with me. I can't imagine letting it out of my sight. I'm starting to wonder if I'm being unreasonable though. Jenna seems to think I'm trying to shut her out, and the last thing I want is to cause tension in the family. I don't know if I should apologize or stick to my decision. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments before reading the update. She's not even related to your husband? Like a child requesting it, I can see, but it's her father-in-law's wedding ring. Lol, she can get lost. She has zero claim to it. Not the a-hole. I really appreciate your support. I've been feeling so conflicted, but it helps to hear that others understand how personal this is to me. I would buy a chain and start wearing it. That way you know where it is. Not the a-hole. WTF? Who are these family members saying your late husband's wedding ring is just another piece of jewelry? That's bananas. Not the a-hole, but your daughter-in-law and any family members encouraging this lunacy are. She was wildly out of line to ask for the ring. This is crazy. Even if it was your son/his son asking, that would be iffy and totally reasonable to say no. The wedding ring was a special symbol between you and your husband. No one else. This is wild. Also, if the ring isn't that big of a deal, then it's not a big deal to wear it. Can't have it both ways to those saying it's not a big deal. Daughter-in-law, while I appreciate that you want to form stronger bonds with our family, this isn't the way to do it. That ring isn't something I would ever loan out or give to anyone else. It is a symbol of my 35-year marriage to the love of my life. It was inappropriate for you to ask for it in the first place, and wildly inappropriate for you to react this way to me saying no. I really can't believe this even has to be said. Damn. Also, I would hide a ring when she or your son is over. Or wear it. Thank you for understanding. It's been such a hard thing to navigate. I feel awful for saying no to Jenna because I really do want her to feel part of the family. And I didn't mean to hurt her feelings. It's just that the ring is so deeply personal to me. Every time I look at it, it reminds me of my husband and all the years we spent together. I've been trying to think of ways to make it up to her or help her feel more connected, but I just don't know what to do without giving up something that means so much to me. I feel stuck, and the last thing I want is to cause tension. I didn't expect this to become such a big issue. It's honestly been weighing on me. Now for the update. Something really weird just happened and I don't even know what to think. You know how Jenna's been acting strangely lately? The whole ring thing, getting rid of my late husband's belongings, and being obsessed with his ring? Well, let me tell you, this situation just got worse. Really, really bad. At 6 a.m. this morning, my son called me. He said he was worried about Jenna because she wasn't feeling well. He asked me to come over and sit with her. Honestly, I wasn't in the mood to deal with it and didn't even want to go, but since he asked, I figured I should do my part. When I got there, she was lying on the couch looking pale and shaky. She didn't look like herself at all. I immediately suggested taking her to the ER, but she snapped at me and insisted she was fine. When I told her she needed to see a doctor, she screamed at me to leave her alone and get out. She was clearly angry and didn't want me there at all. But I thought maybe I could at least help her feel more comfortable. I told her I was going to use the bathroom and then I'll leave her be. While washing my hands, I noticed the guest bedroom door was open. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I figured maybe I could grab her an extra pillow or something. She didn't seem to be resting well and could probably use something more comfortable. I wasn't trying to snoop, I was just trying to be helpful. But when I pulled a pillow down from the top shelf of the closet, I noticed something behind it, a box I'd never seen before. It looked out of place, like it had been shoved there or hidden. At first, I didn't recognize the box, but when I opened it, well, you're not going to believe what I found inside. First, there was my husband's old fishing hat. I thought we'd already gotten rid of all his old stuff when they helped me clean the house, but here it was, tucked away. Then there were some other random things. His old scratched-up sunglasses and a pack of Black & Milds. I'm certain I didn't buy them, but I know my husband used to smoke them occasionally. At the bottom of the box was a creased Polaroid photo. It was a picture of Jenna. She looked like she was in her late teens or early 20s, standing in front of a lighthouse I immediately recognized. It was a place we used to visit as a family, years before Jenna and my son even met. I have no idea why it was in there with my husband's things. I'm sitting here scratching my head because this is so confusing. Why would you keep these old things? And what is that picture doing in there? Jenna screamed at me to leave from the other room and I was so startled that I put everything back and just left. I don't want her to find out I was snooping, but I can't stop thinking about it. I'm shaking. What just happened? That girl is your husband's affair child. I can't prove it, but my intuition strongly says no. There has to be another explanation. I'm working on figuring it all out as we speak. This is a seriously twisted update. The fact that Jenna has a picture of herself as a child in front of a lighthouse where you and your husband took your family is far too coincidental. The fact that Jenna is so obsessed with your husband's belongings and has this picture in a box of his secretly hidden items is very troubling. Is there any possibility that your husband and Jenna had a previous relationship before she met your son? Could he have dated her mother and been a father figure to her? Is it possible that your husband is her father? At this point, I would seriously wonder about the current relationship she has with your son and how random or coincidental their first meeting really was. All of this is adding up to some seriously twisted stalker vibes. If Jenna suspects you've discovered her secret box, she may try to relocate the evidence. Jenna sounds incredibly unstable, and I'm guessing your son will ignore your concerns unless you can gather more information or documentation about Jenna, your husband, and their past. For the sake of your son and the rest of your family, I suggest you hire a professional investigator to uncover what you might not be able to figure out on your own. It's all so unsettling. The picture by the lighthouse really got to me. It's such a personal memory for our family. People are saying my husband might have had some connection to Jenna's mother, but I just can't believe he'd stoop so low. All I know about her mother is that Jenna had a rough childhood, grew up in foster care, and isn't in contact with her. We've never even met her. The idea that Jenna somehow forced her way into my son's life feels too strange to ignore, but I don't even know where to start. Part of me doesn't want to dig deeper, but at this point, I might not have a choice. I hope she doesn't know I snooped or found her box, but now I'm worried she might move it, which is another reason I'm so unsure of how to confront the situation. Regardless of the truth, I can't imagine a scenario where Jenna would come clean, at least not in a calm and kind way. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my sister that my wife isn't spoiled, her husband just doesn't like her? I, 34 male, am married to the love of my life, Michelle, 31 female, and we've been together for 13 years, married for 11. My wife is chronically ill, and as soon as it was financially feasible, I suggested she quit her job and stay at home. Since then, I've become quite successful in my career, and I've encouraged her to get out of the house to pursue hobbies we didn't have the money, time, or energy for before. We are incredibly happy with the direction our life is going, and Michelle's mental and physical health has never been better. We split household chores according to how Michelle is feeling. On her good days, she'll usually do just about everything that needs to be done before I even get home. On days when her illness is acting up, a lot of it falls on me. I honestly don't mind. There isn't a whole lot for us to do on a day-to-day basis, besides laundry, dishes, cooking, and tending to the dogs. We have a housekeeper who comes once a week and handles most of the major stuff. I enjoy cooking, and on days she can't do anything, I typically only have about an hour's worth of chores. I also just generally like to spoil her and bring her home gifts and trinkets, encourage and financially support her hobbies, and take her on 2 weekly dates and vacations. I like seeing her happy. My sister, Karen, cannot wrap her head around this concept. Her husband, Bill, works in the same industry as me, making similar money. However, Bill does not treat Karen the way I treat Michelle. Bill won't let Karen be a stay-at-home wife. She frequently mentions how he rarely takes her on dates or brings her home flowers or gifts, how he isn't generous with his money, and how it should be their money. Despite this, she has always criticized my wife for being spoiled. Anytime I mention what my wife happens to be up to that day, example in a cooking class, golfing, painting, my sister gets huffy and makes comments about how lucky my wife must feel and how surprised she is that Michelle stays busy. If I mention ever having to do a single bit of housework, Karen talks about how selfish Michelle is for not doing her part, saying that cooking breakfast is the least my wife could do. If I tell my mother about the emerald earrings I bought Michelle, the spa day I sent her on, or the new recipe I'm making for her tomorrow, Karen makes comments about how our relationship isn't equal and that I'm being taken advantage of. Recently, at a family dinner that neither Bill nor my wife attended, I casually mentioned to my mom that after dinner, I needed to run a load of laundry so I'd have clean pants for work the next day. My wife was having a bad flare-up and had been confined to the couch. My sister scoffed and loudly said, "If she wasn't so spoiled, you wouldn't be coming home to a bunch of chores." I responded with, "My wife isn't spoiled. Your husband just doesn't like you," and asked her why she's forced to work if her husband makes as much as me. She got mad. My parents were irritated and I was asked to leave the dinner. My sister has since sent me texts calling me names, and my mother has reached out saying that what I said was insensitive and asking me to apologize. Am I the a-hole? Now for the comments. Not the a-hole. Your sister sounds bitter because her husband doesn't treat her with the same love and care you show your wife. And instead of addressing that, she's taking it out on you and Michelle. Honestly, she's projecting her frustrations. And while your comment was spicy, it seems like it hit a nerve because there's truth to it. She needs to stop comparing her marriage to yours and work on her own issues with Bill. You're just out here loving your wife and doing what works for your relationship. Chronic illness is not a choice. It's insensitive of your sister to dismiss your wife's health struggles and imply that she's selfish for not contributing equally to household chores when she's experiencing a flare-up. Not the a-hole for being honest. She's just jealous that you treat your wife the way she wants her husband to treat her. What I don't understand is why they're mad at you when she's the one constantly talking smack about your wife. Maybe they need to step back and think about why they're okay with how your sister speaks to you but not okay with what you said. Last story. Am I the a-hole for telling my dad's parents to take care of dad's affair baby if he needs a babysitter because I won't? My parents are getting a divorce. 6 months ago, we found out Dad has a kid 4 with someone else. Dad was cheating, probably a lot and with a ton of women if his reaction was anything to go by. My mom kicked him out, the house is hers, and said his kid wasn't allowed to live with us. Dad ended up moving into a place owned by his parents. They're wealthy. I, 16 male, don't see him. My siblings, 13 female, 12 male, saw him once, but the judge said we didn't have to go and see him. We don't want to see him, so we don't go. My dad's parents were never very present in our lives, but now they're acting like we were once close, and that we're punishing the whole family for what Dad did. It started when Dad texted me and asked me to babysit for him. I can't block him yet while court stuff is still ongoing. Apparently, a judge wouldn't look at that in a good light and could change the custody stuff if we ever sever all ties right now. Having his number unblocked is enough. I ignored his texts, and then his parents showed up at our house and told me I needed to babysit my sibling and spend time with them because we'll be family forever. I said no. They tried to argue, but I said I won't be in the kid's life, so there's no forever. I said I don't want to know the kid, or Dad, or any of them. Then Mom made them leave. Dad texted some more. We saved these messages and Mom's lawyer documented them, but I ignored those too. Then his parents tried again, and I told them I don't want to take care of Dad's affair baby. They can since they've got money and they want this kid. I said I don't, and that's not changing. They told me the child is innocent, and I said I know, but I don't go out of my way to get to know innocent kids I see in the world. And I'm not going to do it for this one either. They told me I'm still punishing a child who's my sibling, and that the kid will grow up wondering why their 3 half-siblings won't even speak to them. They also said I'd be paid for babysitting, which makes my stubbornness even worse. Am I the a-hole? Nope, not the a-hole. You've got freedom of choice, and you've made your choice. You did great telling your grandparents to watch the kid themselves if they're so bent out of shape about it. Next time, you should also tell them that it's not your fault or responsibility that their son threw his nice life in the toilet, and it's actually their fault for not raising him with better morals. Not the a-hole. They're right, the kid is innocent, but it seems they forgot you're a kid too. Not the a-hole. And in what way is the 16-year-old not babysitting punishing the kid? Ridiculous. It's punishing the adults who don't want to watch the kid either. They care about themselves, not opiate siblings. Hopefully when the court stuff is over, the kids can all block their sperm donor and his parents and have peaceful lives going forward. Not the a-hole. Exactly as you say, this kid is a stranger to you, and innocent or not, is not part of your life. You have the right to decide who you have in your life, and it's perfectly reasonable not to want to have anything to do with this child. Opie and their full siblings are innocent too. They're not the ones who cheated on their spouse, but they're still being punished by having their family ripped apart. Forcing them to do extra chores, babysitting, is punishing them for something they didn't do. Update. I found out the actual reason my mom lost custody of me, and I don't know if I can ever look at her again. Original post. I was removed from my mother's care by DCFS when I was 11 years old due to allegations of SA post against my stepfather. He was convicted by those crimes, but took a plea deal which meant he'd be out by the time I was 13. And from what I can remember, I don't even know that he served those 2 full years anyway. I was his primary victim. I don't remember how old I was when it started, but the earliest he admitted to was when I was 8. I don't know if my mom knew before DCFS got involved or if she found out afterwards, but now I don't think it would have mattered to her if she was aware. After being put into temporary custody of the state while the legal issues were sorted out, eventually I was placed with a relative and her husband, who later adopted me when it was clear my mother wouldn't be getting me back. My adoptive parents put me in therapy, got me the help I needed, did everything they could to make me feel safe again. Something they never prevented me from was speaking to my mother. I was always able to call or text her, and she was always allowed to come visit me, but I could never go and see her. I didn't really question it as a kid. I assumed it was some stipulation the courts made. I believed growing up that the reason my mom hadn't gotten me back was because of neglect, I guess. I assumed that the court thought it was partly her fault that I had been left unattended with that man so often, or that it took someone else noticing I was physically injured for something to be done about it. My adoptive parents never challenged these assumptions I had, and they always told me that they would never stop me from having a relationship with my mom, so long as that's what I wanted. Once I turned 18, my mom and I started talking more frequently, but we didn't see each other in person often. I never really thought much of it at first, but as the years went by, I started questioning the circumstances of my removal and subsequent adoption. I was confused as to why a woman with no prior issues with the law would have had her child taken from her in such a cut and dry way. I decided to ask my adoptive parents about it, and they very gently informed me that my mother was told that in order for her to regain custody of me, her husband, my abuser, would be required to leave the home and could not under any circumstances come near me. Not only because he was an offender, but because I was the victim. My mother evidently could not meet these conditions, and so I was adopted by my relatives. When I worked up the courage to ask my mom if it was true, she didn't deny it. She told me she loved him, that he was a good man who made a mistake. They said that she could have her daughter or she could stay with her husband, and she chose him. She picked him over me. I don't even know what to do with the things I'm feeling now. I feel sick just thinking about it. She's my mother, and she knew what he did. He was convicted of sexually abusing her 11-year-old child, and she refused to leave him. For the past 12 years, she has willingly slept in a bed next to the man that assaulted her daughter. She has stayed married to the man who hurt me. My adoptive parents said they were advised by the therapist to let me figure it out in my own time, as my mother, despite picking that man over me, never made any move to have me near him again. She just wasn't willing to make him leave so that I could be with her. Evidently, the therapist thought it would be more detrimental in the long run to keep me from communicating with my mother entirely. None of that makes me feel better. The past few days have felt like a nightmare. I don't understand how she could stay with him. I don't understand why she chose a monster over her child. I'm trying to understand why my adoptive parents didn't tell me, but to be honest, I don't really understand their reasoning either. My mom has been texting me, but I haven't answered. I can't even think about her without feeling nauseous, or so angry I want to cry, or both. My adoptive parents keep checking in on me, but I've only answered the phone for them because I don't want them to drive here out of concern. I really don't even know what to do anymore. Now for the top comments before reading the update. Your adoptive parents consulted with medical professionals on how to deal with this. They took that advice because they didn't want to cause you more harm and because they love you. They were putting you first because you were their priority over their own feelings. How do I know that? Because I had a family member in a similar situation. It ripped them to pieces every time their child had contact with a parent that refused to protect them, knowing that child was being harmed repeatedly. Everything your adoptive parents did, they did it out of love for you, no matter how hard it was on them. I will be honest, I don't understand people like your mother. Children should be protected at all costs. At the very least, you need time and distance from her. You may be able to forgive her, but don't trust her. If it were me, that relationship would be over. If you're not in counseling still, then please find counseling. This is a horrendous thing to deal with, and just too hard for a person to do on their own. Sending good thoughts and wishes for your healing. Thank you. I really appreciate this perspective. I know they made choices for me based on what they thought would help me most in the end. This is just such an, I don't know, insane thing to try and process. I feel like I'm kind of losing it. I don't understand my mother either. I don't know how she's able to sleep at night knowing the things that man did. I can't wrap my mind around it. I do have a therapy appointment coming up soon, unrelated to this specific part of my situation, so I'm going to have professional help in dealing with this. I'm just feeling really lost and overwhelmed right now. One of the most disturbing things is that your mom calls her husband sexually assaulting you for years since you were 8 years old a mistake. Her husband made a mistake, and that's a profound level of delusional belief because it was his decision to violate you for years and only stopped because the authorities were involved. The crime is not a mistake, it's a planned, premeditated decision. I haven't been able to stop thinking about that part. The way she called it a mistake said that he is a good man. She dismissed it as though he didn't make a conscious choice to go into my bedroom every night for 3+ years, like it was an accident or somehow unintentional. The good man she's married to is a predator who will be on the registry for the rest of his life for the things he did to me. I assumed my mother would have loved me enough to at least acknowledge the severity of what my stepfather had done. Evidently, I was wrong. Are you mad at your adoptive parents for not letting you know you were sexually assaulted? What would you have preferred they do instead? Far as your mom, don't talk to her again because she clearly doesn't love you. I'm not mad at my parents. I'm just having a hard time processing their choice not to tell me my mother remained married to my abuser all these years. I've spent all this time trying to connect with her in some way. But if I had known that she had chosen over a decade ago to stay with a predator instead of get me back, I think I would have cut my losses much sooner. I don't really know how I feel about it right now, but I'm not really mad at them. I know they did their best. Also, they didn't have to inform me that I was abused. Believe me, I am very aware. Now for the update. I guess I wanted to write a little bit of an update. I didn't expect so many people to see the post. Honestly, I just needed to vent, and I didn't want to dump any of that on my friends or family. I had a therapy session earlier in the week, so I was able to bring this revelation up to my therapist, and we're going to work on ways to help me process this. That's obviously something that's going to take time, but I'm sure eventually I'll find a way to live with it. Right now, I still don't know how to unpack any of the feelings I have about this. I do understand why my adoptive parents went about it the way they did. In the moment, being given that information was just a lot to comprehend and deal with, and I felt betrayed. Not necessarily by them, but I think I did put some of those feelings onto them. That wasn't really fair, and I did try to apologize, but they aren't upset with me for it. They told me they felt I didn't have anything to be sorry for. They know firsthand how difficult this is for me, and they told me they were already expecting the reaction I had. My adoptive mom said that if she had been in my shoes, she would have been upset too, even if that feeling wasn't entirely directed at the right people. I did speak to them about how I felt and ask if they could tell me a little more about why they decided to handle it the way they did. They said that when they got custody of me and saw all the ways the trauma from my early childhood manifested, they wanted to do everything they could to make sure I would be able to grow up as cared for and well-adjusted as possible. When the therapist encouraged them not to tell me the truth or challenge my belief that I'd been removed from my mom because of neglect, they followed that advice. The doctors and my parents thought it was best for me to realize and understand my mother's choice on my own. They said I had already been failed by so many adults in my life who were supposed to protect me, and they didn't want to add to that list. My adoptive dad also mentioned wanting me to be able to enjoy at least part of my childhood without a revelation like that hanging over my head. Looking back on it all, I really appreciate that. I don't remember much of my childhood up until I was placed in my adoptive parents' custody, and what I can remember isn't great, but the childhood they gave me made up for that in spades. I know the choices my adoptive parents made for me were made with my best interest in mind. I love them, and I know everything they did was out of love for me too. I feel like people misinterpreted what I was saying in my last post about my feelings toward them, so I just wanted to clarify that part. Regarding my mother, I essentially told her that I wasn't interested in speaking again, given everything I know now. I don't know how she took it because I've since blocked her number. My parents have agreed to reiterate that message from me if she contacts them, but I don't think she will. I'm never reaching out to her again. I can't do it. I think part of me is always going to wonder why she did the things she did. But based on all the answers she's given to my questions so far, I'm not sure her honesty would be very helpful to me in the long run. Thank you for your words of encouragement and kindness. I really needed them in that moment, and I truly appreciate you all for it. Proud of you. I'm glad everything worked out. Keep your mom out of your life. Finally, we have a post where the kid's treating the adoptive parents with love and respect. I didn't read your first post until I saw this edit. I look at my precious 2-year-old and I really can't understand what parents wouldn't get rid of people who would hurt their precious one. I held my little one as a potato, saw him take his first steps, watch him develop and grow. My heart hurt earlier today when my toddler hit me unintentionally in the mouth and I yelped loudly in pain and saw his little lip quiver as he started to cry. I held him so tightly because even though he hurt me, he felt it more. I would get rid of anyone who hurt my son. I'd have to fight off any murderous rage. Your birth mom failed you massively. I'm glad you've got your adoptive family. Last story. Am I the a-hole for laughing when my mom said she'd hope I would care for my stepdad in his old age? For some context, my mom broke up our family when I was 6 and my brother was 11 to be with my stepdad. Our dad moved to a neighboring state, and we only got to see him every other weekend. I've only connected all these details as an adult. My brother and I are now both in our 30s, and my dad didn't share details of the divorce until the last few years. To say I lost a lot of respect for my mom and stepdad is an understatement. My mom chose to replace our dad with an angry alcoholic and thought we'd make a big, happy family. Hint, it never happened. I forgive them, it was years ago, but the respect is gone. Growing up with them was stressful and like walking on eggshells. If I had a disagreement with my stepdad, my mom would come home and only talk to him about what happened before giving me a punishment. The day my brother graduated high school, he moved out. We both had nothing but disdain for my stepdad. He got drunk every single day and was mean. Not physically, but verbally. I'll never forget being called a whore for going on a date with my boyfriend or the time we followed a young woman to her home after she flipped us off on the road. After I became an adult and got married at a young age, our relationship improved. I've now been married for almost 13 years, and we have 2 little girls together. When my stepdad comes to our house, we get along great. When we went back to their home for Thanksgiving a few years ago, it was very stressful. Many parts of me felt like I was stepping back into high school again. Fast forward to a conversation I had with my mom recently. We were discussing children taking in their parents in their old age. Something I might add, my mom never did for my grandma after my grandpa died. Why? Because my stepdad couldn't live with her. None of her other 3 kids took her in either, and she managed okay, passing away in her own home with my mom and aunts at her side. Anyhow, we were discussing this subject and how many parents might be taken in by their children after their spouses pass away. For example, my mom coming to stay with us after my stepdad passes away, my mother-in-law, or my dad, etc. She said she hopes that if she passed away, I would consider taking my stepdad in if he were elderly. I actually laughed out loud before even considering how my reaction might hurt her feelings. First of all, even if it were my own dad, I would prefer to take in one of our moms if I'm going to be a primary caregiver. And of course, if we never actually took anyone into our home, we would still help and support them however we could. But my mom expecting this of me with my stepdad? What magical land is this where irony doesn't exist? I have never considered him a father figure. He played a huge role in breaking apart my family at a young age and refused to take in my terminally ill grandma when she needed it most. So am I the a-hole for laughing? How did she react? And how did she not know this man made your lives miserable under her roof? Her eyes widened in shock. I immediately said, sorry, didn't mean to laugh that loud, but we basically already called dibs on my mother-in-law. She changed the subject, thank God. And she knew we all hated each other. She dated him for 5 years before marrying him, and she had plenty of chances to prioritize her kids, but she never did. If she prioritized her kids, she would have honored her original vows to my dad. OP, I think you need to take a serious look at your relationship with your mom. You say the relationships have gotten better after you moved out and got married. Isn't that because they can no longer control you the way they did when you were a child? Your mom clearly still does not respect you, and she won't even acknowledge the abuse they both perpetrated. They're better when they come to you, but when you got to their house, where they feel in control, they become abusive again. Why do you want your children to have a relationship with 2 abusers and 1 alcoholic? I strongly suggest getting some counseling to unpack your feelings about this. You say you forgave them, but did you really acknowledge your own feelings and hurts? Or did you just bury it all for the sake of keeping the peace? Forgiveness is not reconciliation. Do you have a daughter? What will you do when he calls her a whore? My mom and stepdad are not on the list of people who are allowed to watch our children, which frankly is a small opportunity because they don't live in our state. They've offered a few times to let my husband and me take a weekend trip, and we have declined. They also know that my husband's brother and sister-in-law are our kids' godparents. We also don't visit their house anymore because of the Thanksgiving experience. So far, it's working out, and they don't mind coming here. Generally, they're on their best behavior because other families always around with us. I might seek a counselor because, besides venting to my husband, I really don't know how to come to terms with how I feel about them after learning the whole truth about their relationship. I often think if my mom makes the wrong comment or pushes me too far one day, I might unload on her. No, you're not the a-hole. Given your history with him and your mom's request, it's understandable to laugh at something that feels so ironic. I agree, not the a-hole. Your mom's request is pretty out there considering the history between you and your stepdad. Honestly, she was pushing her luck even asking if you'd take her in. But to ask it for a man who is neither a blood relation nor a father figure and made your childhood miserable is absurd. Not the a-hole. At all. You deserve to keep your home a safe haven for yourself.